I'm Bonnie. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and today we have a holiday episode of sorts for you. We figured since Christmas is next week, so when we're filming this, Christmas will only be a few days away, and we thought it would be a really great idea to help you or give you some ideas on how to use the tarot to navigate some of that stress and overwhelm that we can often feel during this time of year, during the holiday season. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about some cards that we can pull intentionally if we are feeling overwhelmed and stressed. And then Peter and I are both going to share a spread that you can use, again, to help you with this time of year. So we hope that these tips will inspire you to take a deep breath and get centered and grounded, because although this time of year can be a lot of fun, it can also be quite stressful for some people as well. So we're hoping to ease that a little bit for you on this episode today. So, hi, Peter.
Hi, Bonnie. Yeah, it's because I always find for those of us who live in the north as well, we've got that idea of the solstice coming. So we've also, it's dark for 16 hours a day. So on top of the stress of the holiday season, because I think when we launch this, we're actually going to launch this on the solstice. I think it actually, we'll launch on the shortest day of the year in the north. It can get to people, right? It adds to that stress. The idea that we don't get that infusion of vitamin D, we don't get that idea of light and bright that happens. Can affect people seasonally. So all those things add, and then like Bonnie said, we'll talk about cards that we can draw intentionally. The one that I'm going to think of actually, helps during that dark time. So
yeah, I love that you bring that up, Peter, because the solstice is coming. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that our bodies naturally sort of coincide with what's happening with the seasons. Mm-hmm. So again, we're speaking from a northern perspective because we are in the north, but it's winter, it's cold, it's very dark. So what does that mean? It's a really great time to rest and to find ways that we can relax the body. Like it's the actual universe's guidance to be like, this is your time to rest and be still and for introspection. So if we, instead of sort of fighting that like, oh, the winter, right? It would be like, oh, this is a really great time for me to recharge and figure out what's really important for me. And because this season is so busy, if we can start to plant those little seeds of like, it's okay still in the midst of all of this chaos to have some time for reflection and to go inward, then that's really going to help me sort of deal with the stress of the season and coming into the new year. So I'm glad you brought that up, Peter.
Yeah, well, because I also think too with that seasonal affect is we forget because we're stuck in that winter cold dark, but that solstice also marks the time of growing light because the darkness starts to decrease after we pass that, December. I think it might be the 21st or 22nd, but after we pass that solstice, we still feel the dark. But the truth is that minute by minute, the light is growing. So what a great time as well to reflect on things like, and we often do that when we talk about resolutions, which, we'll talk about in another episode, the idea of preparing for growth and preparing for a new year. But that idea of reflection and introspection that we happen really does coincide with that idea of a light that is starting to grow as well. Even though it might not be noticeable, it's definitely happening. So I don't know.
Well, my husband, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I was going to say, my husband is famous for this. So when we hit the summer solstice, he's like, oh, great, days are getting shorter. Like, it's like, we're so happy because we have so much light. And then he's like, oh, days are going to get shorter now. But yeah, with the winter solstice, I'm going to remind him, hey, Steve,
Yeah,
guess what? Days are getting longer now.
are getting longer. And
Yeah.
because for us, I know that we both, my wife and I grew up in Christian families, and we certainly mark Christmas as an important time, but we mark the solstice as well because it really is also an important marker for us, and then that sort of pseudo spiritual, but also personal time for growth is really important. As a matter of fact, this morning we were saying, oh, wait a minute, we sort of have our holiday planned on that day, like our sort of two-person
Mm.
holiday that like our kids are coming the following day, and we're not necessarily going to celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day for a variety of reasons. But we're like, oh, we've got a renovation with a brand new fireplace. We haven't used it yet. We thought, what a great day to get some heat and get some light. So we're going to light the fire the whole day as well. So, anyways, we've digressed now into the how we would celebrate the holidays. But I think when we talk about, because I think it will definitely link to the
Mm.
intentionality of pulling cards. So, being intentional about how you choose to use your own energy or to magnify your energy over the holidays, can be effective. We talk about the idea of darkening light and days that will grow longer, but as somebody who travels to Australia quite a bit because of my family there, I've actually traveled on the longest slash shortest day of the year. So I've had times where I've actually come
Mm.
home on like in that sort of third week of December and have experienced the longest day of the year only to arrive home on the shortest day of the year. So, you really do feel the energy. The busyness is no different in the southern hemisphere than it is in the northern hemisphere. The light, the energy, the light is obviously very different, but it is an important time. So,
Excuse me.
no worries.
Okay, so should we get into what cards we would pull
Yeah,
intentionally and then get into the spreads after that?
totally.
Does that sound good? Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to go or do you want to go?
Doesn't matter. What do you want to do?
All right. Well, you know what? I'll start only
Okay.
because the card that I had first mentioned, we were sort of brainstorming around
Mm.
cards, is a really valuable and I guess relatable one. I would think of drawing the sun, right? So when
Mhm.
we're talking about the idea of I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling overwhelmed over this holiday period, I would pull the sun for a variety of reasons. One, it is the bringer of light. And here in the northern hemisphere, that holiday time is often
Mm.
a time where we see a reduction of light. But it's also a card related to radiance and personal radiance. I often use the language, I'm putting my true self, my radiant self out there. And the sun is a good card to remind us that, this is a time of celebration and joy and radiance, and that, we can sort of combat that darkness by putting our light out there, both for ourselves and for others. So it would probably be my first card to draw at this time would be the sun. So that's probably my number one.
I
Bonnie? What about you?
I'm gonna say I love that, Peter. I wouldn't have thought of the sun. Like I think I go to the like, oh no, I need this energy more of like a balance, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yep.
But thank you for bringing that idea of the sun because it's so prevalent right now, especially in the north, right? If we're bringing in that sun
Hmm.
energy, we
Yeah.
are feeling that vibrancy and that
Of course.
radiance. And I also look at the sun of how we view abundance and gratitude and
Hmm.
joy. So quite often we look at this season as like chaos and stress and I need
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And when we stop and just we're sort of in this present moment of like, look at all the joy that surrounds
Yeah.
me now. Like even Christmas shopping, that can be so, or holiday shopping, that can be so stressful. But if you really stopped and you looked around and like you hear the music playing, it can be really wonderful. And I think we often lose sight of that because we're on a mission and we have to get things done. So thank you for bringing that. I'm totally pulling this up because I could definitely use more of that.
Well, you
So
talked about the energy of like shopping. I don't do it anymore because I have time. I used to intentionally wait until the 24th of December
Oh.
to go out. And of course, people would judge me as the stereotypical male going out on the last day, but I would make that cognitive choice. I'd have my list. So I knew exactly what I was going to get. I knew exactly where I was going to go get it, but I loved the buzz. I loved the
Mhm.
fact I could dismiss the fact that, people would drive like, they'd be crazy drivers out there and everybody would be in a rush. And I would feed off that energy. I would feed
Mhm.
off that energy. So, you're right. It is, and it's different. It's a very different energy than at other times of the year. So
Mhm. For sure. Okay, so what would I pull? I'm gonna I'm gonna pick the very obvious choice. I love that you didn't pick obvious and I'm
it may
picking
not be
obvious.
the obvious choice to some of the people who are listening. So
Maybe not. I'm going to go with temperance.
mm,
So, if you've listened to this podcast before, I have a huge admiration for the temperance card. Temperance for me, again, is about balance. And it's about, I really look at this card as it doesn't have to be all or nothing because I need that in my life. I tend to view things, and if it's not perfect, I'm not even doing it. And I think this time of year brings a lot of that, like, oh, I have to make it perfect. I have to find the perfect gift. I have to do that thing. And then that causes so much stress. And temperance really helps us to say it's okay to take a step forward and go like the middle path, right? Like, where can you find balance in the situation? How can you not look at things as like black and white and be in that gray area? It's okay to do that. So, temperance really brings me to that place of like groundedness. And it also, this other side of temperance is kind of like your guardian angel. I love to look at the card from that perspective of knowing that you have support around you. So if you are getting overwhelmed and frustrated and be like, okay, I just need some help right now, like guardian angel or, whatever, that sort of being or figure is for you that is meaningful and helpful and supportive, call upon that for help as you're trying to navigate and know that not everything has to be perfect. Perfection really is it's hard
it's
when you want everything to be a certain way, and
totally.
that can really take away from the happiness and the joy of the season. So I would pull on temper. I usually have temperance sits on my desk all the time, but I would definitely draw on the energy of temperance
Yeah.
to help me during this time of year.
Yeah. And I think you had said in a past episode, temperance is a card for this year for you, is it not? Was temperance not a significant card, or maybe there was a month? Okay.
It may have been one of my cards of the
Of the
month, yeah.
month.
Because I pull
Uh,
a year, yeah. On my birthday, I do like a full year of cards, so temperance might have been on there. But
but
I have temperance sitting on my desk to always remind me it's okay, Bonnie, to
and
go in the middle.
it's a great card. Like you talk about the holiday season, and from an astrological perspective, temperance being linked to Sagittarius, which is, when Sag ends, the solstice begins. The solstice, the winter solstice in the north, is the idea of the start of the season of Capricorn. And I was thinking, if we're going to intentionally draw that temperance card, it's also nice to bring that energy with us as we move
Mhm.
out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn, because, talking astrologically, what card is that? That's the devil card. That's the gimme, 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 I want this, I want this, I want this. Can't get enough, gorge myself on all the pleasant things that are there. And temperance is a great counterbalance to that energy. So it's a good reminder. I mean, thank you for bringing that card up. I didn't think it was that obvious. I would have gone in another
No.
direction. No, no, I didn't. I didn't think it was that obvious at all. Maybe to you because you use it so much as sort of as a guidepost and an anchor. So, yeah, thanks for that one. All right,
You're welcome. Okay, do
I've
you have another one?
I got one more, and this
Okay.
one might again. I think it might be obvious with the busyness of the season, but I would pull the Four of Swords as well, because we often find ourselves, particularly mentally, being drawn in many different directions, and
Mhm.
that Four of Swords is the card of mental stillness. It's the card that reminds us that you know, shutting down that thought process, shutting down the hamster wheel of our brain that is continuing to go round and round and round and round is really important during this busy time.
Mhm.
There's an element of solitude to the Four of Swords as well. If we look at most cards, it's a single person who is just taking a break, just taking some time to themselves. So that Four of Swords would be the other card that I would pull just to remind myself of the importance of taking a bit of mental me time. So, that's my choice. That's choice number two. Any
I
thoughts
love,
around that, or do you want to add another card?
yeah, I'm going to add like a woohoo. I think that's a
It's
great
got to be a
choice.
quiet mental one though, because it's the Four of Swords. It's going to be.
Yeah. Oh, right. I should whisper. Um, yeah, no, you know how much I love that card. That's one
Yeah,
of my favorite cards.
the
Uh,
meditation card, right?
yeah, yeah, that's my meditation card. Definitely Four of Swords to help you sort of, again, help with those thoughts. And I also see the Four of Swords, which is so important around this time of year. This can be a really sad time for people. Like the holiday season can bring a lot of sadness, especially, when people are dealing, with loved ones that aren't here anymore. So in drawing upon the Four of Swords, that can really help you, because if we think about the Three of Swords that came before that, that can be a really like a time of a lot of heartbreak and sorrow and sadness.
Correct.
And our thoughts, right? We're thinking about memories or things that are really hard for us
Mhm.
at this time of year. So having some compassion for yourself
Yeah.
too, if you're feeling the need that you need to rest and heal, drawing on that card, I think is really important, and that can really be beneficial to help you, um, you know, deal with that sort of healing side, but also with the like helping the thoughts.
Yeah, because it really is a card. It is a card of healing as well, right? So that's yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Well, thank you for bringing that one up. Okay, so
All right.
my last card, excuse me, I thought about the Queen of Pentacles. So I actually, if I think about it, I'm like, oh, the Queen of Pentacles could be Mrs. Claus, really. If we
It
think
would be
about
a
it from that,
great Mrs.
it would,
Claus.
yeah, it would be a great Mrs. Claus. So I say the Queen of Pentacles for a number of reasons. One, she's very grounded, and I think we need to ground ourselves, right? I'm wearing red today. I'm like, okay, we need to be grounded because again, we are in our head and we're like rushing and we're busy and thinking about things. So how can we really ground ourselves into this present moment, ground ourselves like into the physicality of what we're doing? The Queen of Pentacles is also nurturing,
Mhm.
and she also advocates for self-care. So again, how can you find those moments in the day? You pull your Four of Swords. That's a great self-care card to really look after yourself as you're going through this time. It's also how we nurture other people, and that doesn't just have to be through gifts, right? Like we think about gifts as like, oh, I have to get that gift, but like, why are you giving that gift? Like, if you can find some energy around like, why do we give gifts to people? We give gifts to people because we want them to feel special, or we want them to know, like what sort of we did to sort of bring that to them. I'm not really making sense in what I'm saying, but it's like, take the money and the wrapping and all of that stuff away and think about, why do we give
Mhm.
gifts to people, right? So sort of bringing that energy into it, and then trying to like fill this time with gratitude for the people that we're around as well, right? I know in my house, if I'm hosting, I tend to get a little crazy and like, oh my God, I got to get this done, right? So, but if we come back to like just looking around and being like, oh, I'm providing this really wonderful space, or if you're at somebody else's house who is hosting, like really feeling that gratitude and joy of spending time with other people, why we're all together, and just feeling that deep gratitude for the holiday that you're celebrating, and who you're with, and how you can bring that sort of side of gratitude to it, as opposed to just all the material things that we think go along with the holidays.
Yeah, well, and I think so. Thank you for that, because the card holder that's holding the lover's card that's over my shoulder right now. I think when we're done, I'm going to take it out. I'm putting the Queen of Pentacles in, and I'm bringing it down into the kitchen.
Mhm.
As we start thinking, because I know for us, we'll have our adult children and their partners will be coming over, and we host every year because it's kind of easy, and thinking about the practicality and the construction, the act of cooking that would sit in the pentacles, and the act of doing it with love and support and kindness and gratitude that would sit to be housed in that queen, right? So that, there's work that has to be done, but then there's the love that it's being done with. And I think the Queen of
Mhm.
Pentacles really does blend those two energies really, really nicely. So I would have not thought of that one. And, in the same way you were thinking about the sun, the Queen of Pentacles is about to become part of the holiday ritual here. We were talking this. We still haven't decided on the menu yet. So it's gonna go downstairs in the kitchen. As soon as we're done recording, I'm bringing it down into the kitchen. So
Yay.
yeah.
Well, it's funny. I met with a friend of mine yesterday. We had lunch, and she's an amazing entertainer. She throws incredible parties, and like she's just, I don't know, this beautiful soul. And I also love to entertain, but the way she entertains, she's like, don't you just love when you look around and everybody's having a good
Yeah.
time, and it just feels so good. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I go, no, because I'm like stressed out in the kitchen trying to make everything perfect.
Right.
And I thought, if I could just shift my perspective to be like, nobody's expecting perfection.
Right.
Like when you throw that into the mix of things, it derails everything. And then maybe
Mhm.
they're experiencing joy, but you're not, because you're feeling like it has to be a certain
Mhm.
way. But if you can really stop and look around and be like, wow, everybody's here enjoying themselves, and I'm giving with love, like I'm cooking with love, that's all that matters. So that really made an impression on me. So I'm hoping now that's going to help me with my entertaining going forward, of sort of letting go of the stress and embody. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to put the Queen of Pentacles in my kitchen, Peter, and draw on that energy.
Yeah. Well, every card we talked about actually combats that idea that perfection is the bar that we need. The idea of the
Mhm.
sun being it's not the perfect self, it's the true and authentic self. Right?
Exactly.
You talk about the Queen of Pentacles, it's the idea of, gratitude and love for what we're bringing forward. We talk about temperance. Again, temperance is talking about that balance between, what I need for myself, what I need for others, whatever, that element of balance happens to be. And the same thing with the Four of Swords. It's giving ourselves that mental space to be able to say, you know what? I need to kind of quiet myself down. I've done enough. Even trying to combat the self-talk of, oh, this has to be perfect. Oh, this has to be perfect.
Mhm.
Swords is a great card to combat that. And then I'm going to mention the honorable mention that we had both talked
Mhm.
about beforehand, which would be another card. It's almost like Temperance Light. It's the
Mhm.
Two of Pentacles, which was the card. Actually, the Lover's card is in now over my shoulder. The Two of Pentacles was there prior to, because I think it does a great job of reminding us that we don't actually have to have 100 balls in the air, that we really, are trying to strive for um, doable balance, for a balance that is actually attainable, and that it's not perfection. It's the idea that we really can try and manage both care for ourselves and care for others. Task A and task B. And then when I think about the balance card too, it's actually the juggler in the card in the Rider Waite is not holding both objects at equal height either. One
Mhm.
actually is more prominent than the other, one is higher than the other. So balance doesn't mean, the same thing or all things get equal time or equal energy. It does mean that we can put, our energy towards a main thing and still save a little bit of ourselves for something else. But, that's we had talked about that. Anything, what do you think? Because we both talked about the idea of the Two of Pentacles.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add, Peter. Yeah, it is about balance,
Hmm.
where that balance sits for you. Just because you can juggle all those things doesn't mean you have to. And as you were talking, it reminded me of one more thing about temperance, which we could also talk about with the Two of Pentacles, but moderation, right?
Correct.
Things in moderation.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be so heavy,
Yeah.
one-sided. So,
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
yep. Okay.
Okay.
So, do you have a spread that you want to talk about, Peter, that maybe people could use for this time of year?
I do, and it's funny. I showed you before we got started as to where I went to get this spread. So I think I've mentioned to people I've been practicing tarot for quite some time, and the tool that I have where I have stored some of the old spreads. I'll show those of you who are watching. I'll describe it for those of you who are listening. Will probably tell you just how long I've been doing this. So I went to my trusty recipe box. So
I
this is
love that.
right. This is actually inside here are all kinds of tarot spreads that I probably created close to the start of the new millennium. I even noted some of my handwriting, which has changed. So I went looking for a spread that I would have used because my tarot practice has changed a little bit. That I would have used and probably adapted to something that I would have found somewhere. So my apologies. I don't know the attribution of this spread. It likely the seed of it was found somewhere else, and I've probably taken it and changed it. I called it the star spread because it actually has sort of 5 cards that would be laid out in a star pattern, with the first card at the very top point, card 2 and 3 left and right, card 4 and 5 sort of left and right at the bottom. So sort of 1 at the top, 2 and 3 in the middle, left and right side, 4 and 5 at the bottom, left and right side, giving a visual representation of a star. And what I would have looked at would have been card 1 as, if we're looking at, a dealing with a stressful time or a time of stress over the holidays, then card 1 would have been, well, what's the cause of the current problem or situation or stress? So that card kind of giving us a little bit of insight into what might be at the root or at the foundation of our issue. Card 2 on, usually I'd always kind of go, left to right. Well, what is a factor that we need to consider that either is driving or impacting our stressful situation? Card 3 would be a piece of advice that we have to take. So something that we might not necessarily, be thinking about, but that might help guide us. And then cards 4 and cards 5 would be paths that we need to explore. So they'd be, new paths forward, moving away from the stressful situation that are ways for us to be able to kind of move through. So, path A and path B to be able to explore to move forward. So again, I'll sort of recap. Card 1 at the very top, what's causing this stressful situation? What might be a potential cause for the problem or the situation? Card 2, something that we need to be considered, that we might need to consider, something that might be at the root of this particular, stressful situation. Card 3, a piece of advice that tarot wants to offer us that we need to take. And then cards 4 and 5, new paths to explore. So, and again, if you can sort of visualize those 5 cards as a star, then that makes it very much 1, a star as guidance, or 2, a star as sort of a symbol of the holiday. So that's the spread that I liked to use in and around this time. I haven't I'll make sure that I'm honest. I haven't used it in quite some time, but I may use it again in the next few days because it really did resonate with me. I don't know. What do you think? Or, or you may think nothing about it and then share a spread of your own.
You know what? I love that it's in the shape of a star.
I went through a period, actually, Bonnie, where I thought the physical manifestation of the spread itself. So I went through a period where I designed, I think I called it the popsicle or lollipop spread. And I went through a period where I designed the house spread, where each issue that we were looking at, relationship was, in the bedroom, how we nurture ourselves was in the kitchen. And I would lay them out so that they looked like a house. I thought that and still do, that the visual representation of a spread can almost help add another layer of manifestation of the work that we're doing. It's one of the reasons why I often work in a linear fashion, because I now work with a very narrative style from left to right, how in my language, how we would read. So I kind of read the tarot in that way. So thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy that. But my old practice, my 20-year ago practice would have embraced that idea of visual structure in the work that we do. So
yeah, that's great. I'm definitely going to do that spread, Peter. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me know, or even let us know how it goes. So.
For sure.
What about you?
Okay, so this can be used I'm calling it, like a holiday spread, but really it can be used anytime you're sort of feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm calling this bringing calm in the midst of chaos. Uh, and what I
Very
like,
appropriate for the time of year.
yes, unless you're not feeling chaotic, and I applaud you. So,
Yeah, so do I.
um, what I love about this spread is it's a 5 card spread, and you can just pull like each card can be used on their own. So you don't have to use it as a spread. You could just use it as 5 different questions, or you can use it as a spread. You can make it shorter, however you want. So again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed about any situation, it could help you. So the first card, and it's very boring. It's very lackluster in comparison to your beautiful star. Mine is like a card on top and then 4 cards on the bottom. You could shape it in the form of a star if you wanted to, but I'm also going to have this on my blog so you can go and have a look at the spread, and the placement of each card. So card number 1, what is currently overwhelming me? Sometimes we'd be surprised about what comes up. We might think it's financial, but maybe relationship comes up. Right. So that's the beauty of tarot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it shows us things that we're not really
Right.
conscious of what's going on. Card number 2, how can I find peace in the present moment? I love that. Again, something might come up that would surprise you. Card 3, what action can I take to nurture myself? Because again, feeling overwhelmed and stress, how can we bring that back to ourselves? What can we do to nurture ourselves in that moment? And how are others so card number 4, how are others affecting my mood? And this could be positive or it could be negative. I automatically went to negative. I'm like, oh, yes, how are other people triggering me right now? And when I pulled this spread for myself, I got a very positive card. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, how is that negatively affecting me? And I'm like, no, Bonnie, it's positively like the mood of other people can actually affect you in a positive way. So again, we have these perceptions of that something's going to come up and it's going to be negative, but it actually came up as a positive. And I thought, wow, it was the Knight of Pentacles. I'm like, how are other people's moods affecting me? I'm like, the Knight of Pentacles. I'm like, they're grounded, and and I'm like, oh right, like the people that are around me are pretty grounded. I should like embody some of that energy. Card number 5, where can I find my internal peaceful place? So sometimes it's just about like, where can I go to find that place inside of me that makes me feel really peaceful? And sometimes just the image on the card, it doesn't necessarily have to be what the traditional meaning of that card is, but what does that card invoke for you? And again, you might be surprised about what comes up for you. So.
Yeah. Now, I know that you said that, the visual component of this was not, but was not kind of where you were going. However, I always think, this is how the tarot works, sometimes unconsciously. You talk about the idea of bringing calm in the midst of chaos, and you place the first card overhead, which is often that overarching chaos, right? We often feel chaos in our heads, and then laid 4 cards down that create a path towards groundedness, that kind of bring us back to ourselves, asking questions and reflections, and finishing off with a question, which is a beautiful question around where we can find internal peace, that internal peaceful place. So, I think when we work with the tarot, we think, oh, I'm not going to lay things out, in any kind of special way. You've done just that without thinking about it. So sometimes our intention is irrelevant. The tarot actually, kind of drives our intention. So I don't.
Well, thank you, Peter.
I don't know. That might not have been your intention, but the minute the first question came out, I thought, oh my goodness, like I can just almost see the cloud of chaos hanging over the solution that's going to present itself, over the next 4 questions. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I do see that now. It's funny because I was going to put them out like in a linear
Yeah.
fashion, and I'm like, no, because this is sort of the like
Right.
overarching, and then I'll have the ones underneath. But I love how you put that in the perspective of like it's usually the mind that causes the
Of course.
chaos, right?
Right.
It's like our thoughts,
Yeah.
and then what's going to help to ground you. So thank you
Totally.
for bringing that insight
Well,
into the spread.
thanks for sharing the spread. Because again, although I think my days of writing them down on recipe cards and putting them in my little recipe box are done. But that will definitely be a spread that I will, add to my work because I definitely I definitely like doing that one. So, and I hope that I people listening, you've got two ideas now for some tarot work that you can do. All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Okay, are we gonna
Time
pull a card?
Yeah, time for a draw. I'm doing kind of, I won't say renovation work because that's not quite fair. But we were 2 weeks without a podcast, partly because I was away for work, basically dump my stuff in my office, other things going on. So I'm just surrounded by crap, for lack of a better word. So I've got my tarot deck all set out and ready to go, and I'm going to shuffle it. So I've kind of pre-selected um, Chris Ann's Light Seer Tarot. Actually, I'm going to go to one of your favorites this time. Oh. Are you using the same deck? Are you using the Light Seer?
No, I'm not using the light seers because it's still December and Christmas is next week.
Ah,
I'm using, I spoke about this deck in a previous episode. It is called the Yuletide Tarot
Yuletide Tarot.
by Christopher Hughes, and the art is by Aaron O'Leary Brown. I have like one more week to use this.
You got those theme decks. See, that's you know, yeah. I don't know what I would pull for a Christmas based theme deck. I don't have one at all.
This is the only one I have.
Is
If
it?
there's other
Okay.
ones out there, please let us know. Although it's dangerous for me to learn about new decks, I'm trying to.
I thought there was a deck called. I think it was called the Victorian Christmas deck. Anyways,
Oh, really?
I think so, but
Hmm.
all right. Do you want to draw first, or do you? Okay, I'm gonna stop. Pull. All right.
You have your card?
I've got my card. Yeah, I've got it. No,
Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Go ahead
We're
then.
we're so Canadian. You
We're
go.
so
No.
okay.
I would
You
say
go.
this
No,
is why
no, it's
this is why
okay. You go.
roundabouts don't work in Canadian traffic. No, no, you go. No, please, no. By all means, you go after you, please. By all means. I drew the King of Swords. I don't know if I
Ah,
have actually drawn, like, this is episode 30, by the way. So, yay to us, 30 episodes. And I'm not sure I've drawn this card in any of the 30 episodes. And I'm using, like I said, I'm using Chris Ann's Light Seers Tarot. Beautiful card. I always think it's interesting because when I look at this, it's all kinds of blue and I attribute blue to water. But then when I take a good look, it's mountains and air and
mhm.
you know, um, and clouds, which is very much an element of the King of Swords card. So King of Swords is that fire air combo, right? King is fire, swords is air. So I think right away about the idea of passion and words, of what kind of drives us, our intuition and our thoughts, or sorry, not our intuition, our intention and our thoughts. The control over our thoughts, the King of Swords, very much very discerning over how and when we reach out to people, very thoughtful around how we engage with others. Kings are all about control and about leadership. I think of the King of Swords as the ultimate diplomat. They say just enough, they know exactly what they need to say, and they know exactly when they need to say it. So, and then, so here, I think, well, we got fire and air. There's no water here. So this might be a time, it might be a calling to us, especially over the holidays, to kind of check our words and make sure that they're not overly emotional, that we need to be, kind of thoughtful and frugal. And I think discerning was the word that I had used before, in our mind and in our speech, because I always think, the other side of the King of Swords is if the King of Swords unleashes their communication skills, they're gonna dominate a room. And
Mhm.
sometimes that can be a good thing, and sometimes it can be, to their detriment. Because I think that swords are they're a funny energy, right? The swords are sometimes challenging because a sword can defend and a sword can attack.
Mhm.
So swords can kind of be in the background and just sort of waiting for us to have to use them, or we can draw them out and we can sort of use them, right away. So I think really powerful card. The king of the both the queen and the king of swords can be really, really powerful cards if and when we sort of know how to use their energy. So, like I said, calling at this particular time would be, when am I going to use my words? When am I not? How am I going to select? How am I going to exert control over, everything that I have to say, even things that I think? This could be another card when we talk about the idea of busyness in the season. If the swords represent our thoughts, then the king represents control over our thoughts as well.
Mm.
I don't know. What do you think about anything I've shared there?
Yes, I love it all. And when you were talking about how there's a lot of blue in that card, and
Mm,
you attribute blue to
to
water.
what?
Well, blue in the sky, if we think about the throat chakra, that's the color blue. I think I'm getting this right. And blue, again, the throat chakra is how we communicate. It's our authenticity, speaking our truth, which is so ingrained in the card in the King of Swords, right? So I like the King of Swords. I think about the kings and they all have their different qualities, and
Yeah.
he's the most courageous. Like, if you want someone by your side, it's that King of Swords, right? He's brave, he's courageous, but he's also fair and he tells the
Mhm.
truth. So how can we show up in our most authentic self? How can we use our communication, whether we're writing like texts or emails, or communicating with our voice? How can we do that in the most authentic way that really speaks our own truth? And again, it doesn't have to come from this place of force or I'm better than you, right? Like, how can we do that in our most authentic voice? And I think that's important around this time of year,
Mhm.
because as wonderful as getting together with family over the holidays is, sometimes it can be really stressful with different personalities and
Correct.
different people. And a lot of times people won't be their authentic self because they're afraid to express themselves. So, how can you use that energy of the King of Swords to really stand in your own authenticity and truth
Mhm.
and speak, but from a place of kindness and compassion, and not an overbearing, like, oh no, I'm the king and this is the way it has to
Right.
be. So, yeah. And if you do need a little courage to go into those family gatherings, or maybe office holiday party, whatever it is,
Yeah,
maybe tuck that little King of Swords in your pocket
that's right.
to give you, to give you some courage and
Yes, because
bravery.
we all have, pocket tarot tins or tiny tarot decks somewhere that we can just sort of slide that King of Swords into our pocket. You talked about the color blue, and I had reached over because my microphone is stored off to the side, and it actually has this beautiful blue stone like right
Oh,
underneath it,
wow.
and around the idea of, I think it's aquamarine, like I think it's an unpolished aquamarine, around the idea of clarity of word, because I
Hmm.
I like making sure that that energy is there. So that was, thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Very good.
All right.
Okay.
What
So,
about you?
again, so I'm using the Yuletide Tarot, and
Hmm.
we've talked about this card before, and I was like, but I'm like, it's very relevant for this time of
Totally.
year, so I'm going to talk about it. It's the Hanged
Oh
Man.
yeah. Good.
So Major Arcana, number 12. Hanged Man. So if you're watching, you can see the card. If you're listening, it just has a man, sort of just wearing like a cloth, hanging upside down from a tree. And there's a lot more to this card in the guidebook for this deck is amazing. And Christopher talks about different traditions and who that card would or that figure represents. But when I look at that card, because he is mostly unclothed, he just
Mm,
has, sort of a cloth around um, the bottom area. It shows me a sense of vulnerability.
hmm
And when I think about the Hanged Man, I think about sort of surrendering to the present
hmm
moment, taking a pause and seeing things from a different perspective, which I think is very in alignment with what we're talking about today and like the busyness of the holidays and how can we view this from a different perspective. So it's hard to give up control sometimes because we want to make everything a certain way, but the hangman tells us no, like step back and look at this from a different way, and how can you see things differently. And then I, because of what he's not wearing, I see that sense of vulnerability.
Mhm.
Surrendering is very vulnerable because we always want to control. So I'm kind of getting that sense from this card of like taking a step back, taking a deep breath. How can we get some clarity to help us through this season? And maybe shifting our perspective. Like when I met with my friend yesterday, and she's like, "Oh, I just love looking around and seeing how everybody's enjoying themselves." And I thought to myself, I have to change my
Mhm.
perspective and how I entertain. So that's the energy I'm going to take from the hanged man in this time of year is stepping back to see it from a different way and not having to take so much control. What would you have to say about that, Peter?
I love that. And I love that you brought in the concept that different artists bring out different elements of the Hanged Man card. So the idea that the person there is mostly unclothed really does bring out that concept of vulnerability. So thank you for sharing that. And when you talked about, the conversation with your friend and the life that is all around, I think right away about the life that is all around the hanged man in both your card and the card
Hmm.
in the Rider Waite. And you always point out that the hangman is not hanging from a dead tree, that there's life, that the tree, and that's represented in the Rider Waite Smith as well, that the leaves that are coming out of the branch makes that tree one that is vibrant. So it's the idea of suspension and of pause and of vulnerability at a time when life is still going on all around you. And sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do, is to say, I need to take a moment to shift my perspective. I need to take a moment to just, hold myself here in this space, allowing everything else to continue to go on all around, because it's not just because I stop, it doesn't mean everything else is going to stop. And I think the tree, the vibrant tree that's full of life, is a good reminder of that. So, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and thank you for noticing that, because in this card, it is in the middle of winter, so there's snow all on the
Yeah.
ground, and the tree that he's hanging from has fruit on it. There's no leaves on it, but it's full of, well, or I guess there's a few leaves, but it's full of
Full of fruit.
fruit, like ripe fruit, which you don't see in the middle of winter. So I love that perspective of there is light, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like we can see, if we just assume that it's the winter time and everything is like frozen and I can't get anything from this tree, well, actually,
Yeah.
looking at it differently, this tree is full of fruit. So how can we bring that perspective into our everyday life or into the situation that we're in right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Two great cards for the season. So,
Hmm.
all right. There we go. Bonnie.
Okay, yeah, Peter. So, where can people find you? I know you have a really cool course going on right now or just finishing
I
up.
I do. It's the live classes. So the course itself is called Planning 2025 with the Tarot. The live classes have just finished. However, the course itself, the materials, all available and all pre-recorded, really relevant for anybody who would want to use, I'll say, a pretty detailed, almost three-leveled spread that you revisit over several courses, over several points of the year, to help guide and plan your year ahead. So the course is available on my website. So peterwhitetarot.com. Just click on courses and head down to Planning 2025 with the Tarot. I just want to add that any course that you would sign up for me provides you with perpetual access. So that means discussion forum. I actually continue to schedule live Q&As throughout the year for any student who's registered in my course to attend. So you really can bring your learning with you. I'm a huge proponent of lifelong learning. I do work in our local library. I think that learning is something that happens on an ongoing basis, and I structure my courses to be able to continue that learning with kind of one registration fee. So you pay for the course, and you have access for life, and you can access some of those Q&As. So that, I rambled there a little bit, but just to go back to the idea of planning 2025 with the tarot, if you're looking for guidance around a relatively structured, but also somewhat, I'll say, complex, involved tool to help you plan, then please, by all means, check out that course, or at least sign up for my newsletter so that you can, get occasional updates. You can get lunation spreads. Although I will have to state for anybody who's subscribed and who's listening right now, I missed the last one. So we
It's
had,
okay.
I know I'm going to surrender to the time, to the busyness. I'm going to use that hanged man to say, okay, I'm just going to sit in this space. So I'll apologize. I missed one. It's the first one I missed, but we'll definitely catch the new moon when it comes up a little bit later on. What about you, Bonnie? What have you got going on, and where can people find you?
People can find me on my website, which is breathewithbonnie.com. I'm also a little bit on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at Breathe with Bonnie. If you go to my website, you can see what I have to offer. So I love helping people gain some clarity. So if you're struggling with making a decision or just needing some more information, then you can go on my website and book a reading with me. And I also teach meditation classes. So you can find out all the things that I'm doing there or work with me privately. And yeah, I'd love to connect with you. You can also sign up for my newsletter. I also missed a newsletter, so I missed November's. But with my newsletter, I send a monthly intention and a 3-card reading and some other little inspirational tips there. So
great.
Yeah. So we'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you enjoy listening to our episodes, it would really be helpful. And we would so appreciate if you left a positive review, even if you shared it with people who you might think would enjoy this. It really helps us to sort of put our love of tarot out into the world for other people that are looking for a resource. So thank you for listening. And we want to wish you and all of your friends and family a wonderful holiday season. And we hope to see you next time on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter.